What is up, beautiful people? We are on episode something like 135. My VA didn't put it in today, but whatever. We're here. We're having a good time. 137? Did he tell you? I completely forget at this point. It's something like that, right? I kind of forget where we're at right now. We're here with Cody Barton, my friend, and an incredible entrepreneur, right? Business partners, famously business partners with Pace. But also doing a ton of stuff on his own. And I just want to have him on to catch everybody up on his life and like what he's doing business wise. And just like, I like a lot of the stuff and, your new community, which I'm a part of. And I think a lot of more people need to know about it. Right. So it's going to be good. I'm excited to have you here. Sorry. It's just all of a sudden got really hot. I think I kept the heater on too hot. Yeah, like I'm just excited to have you here, my man. Welcome back. Because I forgot we were talking. You were on this podcast before.
Yeah, it was like first 30 episodes, something like that. And shows of consistency, for everybody out there. You gotta be consistent with this stuff, especially content. If you're gonna get in the content game,
100%. It is amazing. I've learned. I think I'm just gonna beat everyone on the content game. Like, I mean, you probably every once in a while see one of my reels, but like, I feel like I'm just going to win at some point. My content, I think, is pretty good. Like, I'm not going to douse myself right now, but the fact that like I'm able to consistently keep going, I feel like you just beat 90% of the people just by doing that in business, right? I feel like you see this like with your content stuff, with your businesses. What do you think just happens? Are people lazy? Do they not get it? Like, what do you think what's happening with most people there?
Dude, I think it's just really discouraging because people it's people are curious, they're not serious, and it's like, I think people have to take the approach of like commitment versus like just being curiously interested in trying something, because the stage of being committed is doing the thing long after the feeling you initially at first had has passed. And now you are at a place of like, okay, like I'm just doing the thing. I'm like, I tell our different sales teams, I'm like, hey, today we're going to chop wood, we're going to haul water, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. And we're going to do it again the next day. It's like, it's just a constant thing that our commitment is just doing the thing consistently long over time. And I think that's the part that makes people leave because, from whatever they're committed to do or thinking they're committed to doing or more curious to doing is they try it and they're like, it's not working. So that doesn't work. And they do other, it's like people kind of get wishy-washy and it's like, you just gotta like, whatever you do, you just have to just go and do it and do it and do it until you figure it out. And at the beginning, when you suck at any new thing, it's like you have to make up in reps what you lack in skill. And most people aren't willing to do that. And so it's a hard place to be.
100%. So I've got a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask you because this podcast, one of the main reasons I do it is also to just it's an incredible way to ask people who are ahead of you, like, questions that you need help for, because like everyone loves being on a podcast, and also now you have to stay with me for at least an hour, right? So question for you, because this is like, I think this is a speciality of yours. Tell me if I'm wrong, right? But I think what entrepreneurs really miss, there's the consistency and then there's like the action taking. That's like step one, right? That's like step one for making any money, right? Just making some money at anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about team building for a second, because I feel like team building is what everyone misses in the second step. So it's like 95% of people just don't do something consistently. Then then 95% of the 5% aren't able to build a team or try and don't know how and screw up and things just don't work out, right? Or they don't know how to do it. Like they knew how to close deals, let's say, and get deals done. But what is everyone missing from team building? Like what is the most common things you're seeing that people are struggling with when they're trying to expand into like making an actual business, right? It's very easy to make, I think it's very easy to make real estate a job. I don't think that's that hard at all. I think literally anyone could do that. I think very few people can turn it into a business. And I'll be honest with my audience, I'm like half and half. I'm like an owner operator. There are parts where I still am in my business and parts where I operate, right? But anywho, so getting to that, like, what do you feel like people are missing team building wise? Like, what do you feel is there?
I think there's a lot to unpack on the team building side. I think it's people underestimate that it is a skill. It's not like you just go get some warm bodies with heartbeats and throw them in and think that they're just going to be able to do a great job. So it comes down to a few things. It's there's layers to it. There's one is finding the right people to do the right thing in your organization, but then there's also the leader that needs to raise their own leadership lid. It's like if someone comes from a background that they've never led people, they've never managed people, and leading people could be in other environments. I often find that people that maybe they were, the star quarterback of a team in high school and college, and they had to lead a team, like they have some of those leadership skills, or, in other areas, other sports and things. I find that there's some more natural tendencies of the leadership skills there. So, it's if people, so part one is like the individual business owner's leadership led, how good are they at leading people and managing people? And if they don't have the background or track record of doing that, you have to, you got to do some work on your own leadership abilities, so you can properly direct, lead, guide, and mentor people in your company. The other component is then, okay, well, if you can do that, now it's like, how the heck do you get people to work for your business? And that's, on my YouTube, I go through that, a lot of different things on that, but, it comes down to getting clear on the outcomes you're looking for. A lot of times people go to hire and they just they're like, I need someone to help me with this stuff, and just hire whoever.
Close deals. What do you mean KPIs? Get money in the bank account.
Sell stuff. Please collect revenue for me, please. Right. So, it's getting clear on, the outcomes that you're looking for and what you want to see happen from whatever the role is, so it's like, if someone's going to be hiring, maybe it's their first person or their 100th person, it's the same type of process of like, okay, what is the role that I'm going to be hiring for? One is like, what's clarity of the role? Like, what the heck is the role called? Like, is this an admin assistant? Is this an acquisitions rep specialist? Like, what the heck is this role? Chat GPT can help you. For those that have never done this, ask it some questions. It can kind of point you in some of the right directions here. Figure out, okay, clarity of role. What the heck is the role for the person, the business owner? Creating clarity of outcome. What is the outcome or the problem that this role is solving? We don't want to just hire people for the sake of hiring. We're hiring them to solve a specific problem for the business. And when we know clarity of what the role is, clarity of what the problems that they're going to solve and the outcomes that we're expecting from this role, then we look at, okay, well, once we know that, then what are the goals for this role? What are the things that, when this person does come into the organization, that we want them to be able to achieve? You mentioned KPIs, key performance indicators. If they're a salesperson, like, is the goal make X amount of calls a day, X amount of talk time, X amount of offers? Like, what are the expectations? Because a lot of times where people struggle too is when they bring in people, one, they don't vet them correctly, but two, when they do bring them in, then it's like there's not clear outcomes of what they're looking for. A lot of times I've became kind of almost annoying with this, but like when we bring in different roles or even agencies, I'll write a what success looks like in our working relationship together with like an agency. And I'm like, this is the outcome that I expect. This is the communication cadence that I expect. This is the result that I expect. Any questions? And let's discuss. And like, if there's anything I missed, we'll add it to the doc. So like, I just like having clear outcomes explained between, whether it's a team member, whether it's an outside third-party agency. I just like to have clarity so I don't have to wonder. It's like, yo, we talked about it. We agreed. We're on the same page. You agreed. I agreed. We know what this looks like. And it's either one of us is either holding, their end of what's expected or not.
I feel like that's what I think a lot of people miss. Like, I think you just hit it on the head. Even I miss it still, right? I mean, you and I literally talked like 3 months, or not even 3 weeks ago, maybe like a month ago max, where I was dealing with issues with an employee, and I was I had thought I set clear expectations. The crazy thing is I can say something and people just don't, it doesn't process. I've learned that. Like I'm starting to learn that slowly. Is like saying something is not even close to good enough, guys. You have to write it down incredibly specifically and incredibly in an incredibly detail oriented way, right? Like so what typically would you put in for, like you were talking about with an agency, let's talk about with an employee, right? Like when you have do you like have them sign a contract and in the contract have it be like, I expect this every single week, this every single week? Is it like you just put all their KPIs in there from the beginning? Or how does that, how do you clearly communicate that to, let's say, an employee or we can use a salesperson. Like how does that go?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends if they're 1099 or W2. Transparently, I have an HR manager that handles our W2 paperwork and stuff, so I don't know how that stuff works, but he just handles it. But like from the expectation after all of the legalese and everything is signed, right? It's really more of like they get the job description, and that as part of that, we have the goals that we have for the role. And so if it's a role that we've already hired for multiple times, typically we'll already have the KPIs established. But if it's a new role, for example, and so for most people listening, if they've never done this, you have to treat it as a new role, because if you just don't know what the KPIs should be, one of the things that we'll do is on the second, we have an external and then an internal job description is what we call it. And so our external job description is what's like marketed out on Indeed for the role that we're hiring for. And that's what like brings the candidate in, that they actually are applying for the job. Our internal job description is the internal doc, which is the guidance to that individual candidate that we review with them once they're hired, to kind of get them now aligned. Like job description outlines what the role is going to be. And then internal is like, here are the goals. Here's the clarity of the role. Here are the goals of the role. Here are your KPIs, if the KPIs are going to be established at that point. And so typically on clarity of role, I write out, you guessed it, what does success look like in this role? And so I write out what that might look like. And then, when we look at the amount or the actual goals, typically for most roles, we'll write about 30 to 60, 90 days of goals for the role, sometimes upwards of 90, not always though. And so one of the things in the first 30 days might be, at the end of 30 days, you will be meeting with your team leader, and you will be getting your KPIs established in stone at that point for the upcoming months going forward. And then the 60-day goal might literally say, hit KPI for that month. So it's like, we're going to have it established by the end of the first month. Month 2 is now you need to hit the KPI that's now set out for the role. And so, but there could be multiple things depending on what the role is. Like maybe the first month is, okay, they need to have mastered maybe not mastered, because that's it takes a while, but you need to be proficient and competent at the 5 most common objections that our sales process gets. You need to be competent at those, to where you can, your sales manager could sit with you, or your team lead could sit with you and say, oh, that's too low of an offer. Oh, I got to talk to my husband. I got to talk to my, and they need to be able to be proficient, competent at being able to rattle off what the top objection handler is for that. So like that might be a goal, and without using their doc, right? It's like on the fly, they should be able to do that. So it's just like setting, we like to set some milestones and some goals that we want to see some reasonable progress over that first 30 days. And everyone has different onboarding practices that they do. I'm consulting for a company right now that every rep that they hire to do sales, they make them the first 2 weeks, they just like, abuse them on cold calling. They make them call like cold for the first week. And then the second week, they put them on all of their old database leads. So there actually were leads from like PPC, cold callers and also direct mail, all sorts of stuff. But they have to just go and farm those old opportunities and have to just, work through that. So everyone's going to have a different, style of how they onboard and train and want to see people do things. But, setting setting the goals that you'd want to see them be able to achieve in the first month, second month, maybe upwards of third month, are all good things to do. And then on that doc, we'll have the KPIs for the role once they're established, right? So in some roles, the KPIs or the objectives might change by the quarter, So for example, my executive assistant, quarterly, we change her goals / KPIs. She has her job responsibilities that she does regularly, but there's other goals that we might set for the quarter. And, a couple of them, like I want to get really good at, getting on lots of podcasts and getting to lots of events that are very relevant for like the type of groups that I want to get to. So I created like this Dream 100 list of types of, events and or people that I'd like to go and be at types of events for. And so one of her projects for this quarter is find and list out, anywhere from 150 to 300 events and or podcasts. And then from that, start reaching out to see which ones that I could be either a guest
on that list, guys. That's how we got on air immediately. Just FYI. I love it. I love it so much. So, okay. So that was half of it. That's like telling the part of it, right? The half of it of like once they are hired. Now let's talk about how to find the right person, right? Like, how do you know if the person is right for that role? This is based on my experience, this is what it feels like. And you can tell me if just maybe I just need to get better at it. It feels like you can get some things known, like if they have past experience, obviously that helps. Yeah. If you can ask certain cultural questions, right? That just like my favorite is like, how did you handle screwing up something? And if they say they've never screwed up anything, I immediately don't hire them because I don't believe you, right? Like you have to have screwed up something, right? Yeah. But in the end, like I feel like it will sometimes work out and sometimes it won't. And you just kind of have to keep going until you find that right person. I don't know like how you feel about that, but it seems like it's a constant process forever.
I don't know. Part of the answer is it is a constant process forever. And certain roles are going to be just higher churn and you create a process around it, right? Like sales roles, historically higher churn roles. People are coming in, they're coming out. And so it's just another thing that you create for your business. And so like, for example, like some of the biggest companies and, Fortune 500 companies or these massive mega digital or online companies, like realtor.com. It's a good example of one where they will work and funnel in and hire like 30 reps and put them through like a gauntlet for like the first month and a half of like training and onboarding and all these checklists and things they have to do. Out of those 30, maybe 15 make it through that training and even freaking start having the honor to cold call leads in their system. And then the people that make it through that next month, there may be only 10 left. And then at the next month, there might be 8 left. You think they don't think that that's going to happen? The reason they hire 30 is because they wanted to hire 5 or 7 or 8. Those are just the numbers that you come up with. And so like, for example, we have, a residential cleaning company. We've helped them increase their lifetime retention on the cleaners there. But when we initially came in, cleaners are staying about 3 months. We've increased it now to about 3.7-ish months. So it's like we're progressively, we've only owned it since June, so it's not been that long. So we're working on increasing that. But we also know cleaners are going to leave every 3 months. So what do? Well, what can we control? We can control our inflow of people. And then we can also control the activity that we're doing and then the training we give them. So it's like when they're coming in, we have a funnel, just like in marketing and sales, you have a hiring, you build a hiring funnel. It's like you have lots of applications. It gets smaller on the ones that you actually would want to reach out to. It gets smaller on the ones that respond. It gets smaller on the ones that actually make it to an interview and pass and go to training and pass training and then get out into the field. And so it's one, you have to look at it like that with any of these higher churn roles. Like operations roles usually stick around longer, but roles like, like customer service, sales, cleaners, janitorial, like there's just different industry, restaurants notorious for high churn. They usually churn over 100%. It's like they usually churn 300% a year in a lot of restaurant businesses. So literally they replace their staff 3 times a year. So how do you handle those things? Well, you have to just plan for them. So going back to your question though, of like, okay, well, how do you make sure that they're good? Sometimes, it's just the beast of it. But it's like when you're going through, like we always do the cultural interview, like you had mentioned. And if it's going to be a sales role, like entry level, cultural interview, we're going to like suss out some stuff in there. We're going to ask some core value questions. Like you said, how did you maybe handle, you had a target that you had to hit at your last sales job. Can you explain a time where you had a target, you missed the target, and how did you get back on track the next month? And if they can't explain a story of like that, because every sales rep has experienced that, if they've been doing it long enough, then that's probably a red flag. It's like, so asking different questions, maybe asking questions around, other core values that might be relevant to your company, that you'd want to just ask a question around that value, to do the right thing. Oh, hey, what would you like in finding out situations and seeing how they would act, like from an integrity standpoint. A client, like obviously you could find ways to craft questions, but like, say a client overpays for, their invoice, but it allows, you and the company to hit bonus that month. Are you gonna, what's your next step? Like, what do you do? Client doesn't complain about it and it's fine. Oh, I'm gonna make sure they get the money back. Oh, no. Well, if they don't complain about it, maybe I'll just see if I can give them more service. It's like, well, that's kind of a out of integrity thing to do, because like we weren't supposed to collect that money. It's like we should just give them their money back and not just try to sell them something else for the money that they accidentally gave us. So it's like you can find different ways to ask questions. But so first interview, cultural, kind of checking into them, something that not a lot of people take the time to do, but you can reach out to their previous employer, find out things about them. And this is something we've done with certain roles, and it's really funny. So people give references, and it's always people that they like and know we're going to say good things about them. Sometimes things that we'll bring up in the interview with certain roles is like, can you explain, did you ever have at your last role somebody that was just really hard on you? They were maybe a good manager, but you just always had challenges with them. And then they're like, oh yeah, like, John, da, da, da. And then, we'll ask for the reference of John. Hey, can you give me John's number, your old manager there? And they're like, I have my references. It's like, I want to hear from John. What does John have to say?
That's really funny. That's crazy. That's a little good tidbit right there.
Yeah, because either way, even if they didn't have like the best working relationship, I want to know if they were a professional. Like, I want to know if that person isn't full of shit, and like I want to hear from that actual, person that isn't their, best friend at their last job that's just going to say they were amazing even though they're not.
Right. No, I mean, that totally makes sense, right? In my head, like I've always thought of that. I'm like, I'm not 100% sure if any of these people are ever going to say these people aren't really good. I usually just judge it based on like, some people are like enthusiastic. Like some references are like, oh my God, this is the best. Do not hire this person. Right. And then I'm like, okay, that's really good. There are some people who are like, yeah, they were good. Right. And to me, that's like, were they actually really good? I have no idea, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting tidbit, though. I like that. I'm going to throw that into my
we never really contact references. We always try to finagle our way in the cultural interview to ask questions about people that they maybe had riffs with, or that they had to have a working professional relationship. Like, tell me about a time of like, working with one of the managers that you've had, you had a good professional working relationship, but you just had challenges with. And oh yeah, I had this guy at this job, and I want that at the end of the interview. Hey, can you get me in contact with that guy or that gal? We'd love to ask them some questions, as we move on to the next stage of the interview. And you might have someone go, because they know that they're going to tell the truth instead of,
right.
Their homie that's, wasn't actually their manager, but just is going to lie for them.
Makes sense. So question with like, I'm curious how you solve that problem. So like, there's one way to solve that problem with the sales role is hire 30 people at once, right? what do your companies do in order to solve with like the higher churn? Because that's like an interesting thing that I've actually been thinking about for my company is
Mm-hmm.
like I always feel like I have kind of a bigger heart where I'm like, okay, I want to make sure like I have everything they could possibly ever need from me. If I hired 30, that sounds crazy. That sounds like that sounds like a nightmare to handle, right? But I'm curious, like, how do you deal with higher churn roles? Do you just like know, like on average, they stay 8 months, so
Yeah.
around month 6, just start hiring again?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, if you think about, if you have a property, a rental property, you know that they're moving out at month 12. You don't start
Right,
marketing it month 13, maybe. Like, I don't know. I like to pre-market stuff. I like to like get
right,
get some feelers coming in, I want
right,
to get the thing filled up, even if I have to do some, some fixing and stuff before they move
right.
in. I want to get that thing back on the, back on the market. But yeah, like we just always keep ads going. That's the biggest thing. Like, if we're hiring for sales role at a company, we have the ads going. If we're not hiring for the sales role, we still have the ad up. We're still
Hmm.
getting applications.
Interesting. What do you do with those applications though? Do you just not respond until you're hiring again?
Yeah, I mean, people are just, dude, when people are like doing applications like 90% plus of the time on like Indeed and stuff, they just mass apply to 72 roles that are open for the type of role that they're looking for. And then you just can go fish through what looks appealing to you based off of their experience. So, yeah, we just keep them going. Or if we know we're a couple months out, what we'll do is we'll have like our HR manager. So, if you don't have an HR manager, I did this in the past, is I'll just be, I'll take some time every couple of weeks and I'll kind of just filter through what applications are there, which ones I'll favorite the ones that look good. I'll send out some, just create some canned messages to send out to the ones that look promising. I'll set up some pre-interviews and just start conversations like, hey, yeah, we're actually, and you can even say, it's like, hey, we just filled this role, but your application looked really good. We're actually going to be opening up a spot here in about 45, 60 days. Now, does that timeline work for you? Or if you haven't found something, is it okay? I'm going to reach out to you if you haven't found something. So we kind of just have a little pipeline of people that are, maybe they find something, maybe they haven't. There's a lot of times people are working at other jobs when they're applying. And so they'll wait because they're like, you find a good fit and they're like, okay, you're not ready yet. I'll stay at my current job because they're just unhappy at their current job. They want to go somewhere else. And you just keep those in the pipipeline. And so
Interesting.
that's what we'll do. We call it keeping the bench. We want to keep our bench full at all
I really
times.
like that. That's interesting, but maybe you don't interview them until you're hiring again, right? Because that takes like a lot of time.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
assuming.
no, no. We don't go through. Yeah, no, no. But like if you're like knowing you're about a month and a half out from like being ready to hire, like you might want to reach out to some and just try to start some just like initial, like literally 5-10 minute conversations. Like send out some emails. Hey, so like the application looked good, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Send out your calendar link. Maybe you get a few booked, you get on the phone with a few of them, kind of vet them out. Hey, we just filled the role. But your application looked really good. We have another round where I'm going to be hiring for this next month, whatever. So that's something that we'll do to keep the bench full. So we're never starting from scratch. The worst thing and the worst place to feel like in the hiring process is knowing you need to let go of somebody, but knowing you have nobody ready to fill that role. You have
Right.
nobody to fill that position. And now you're like, I can't fire them because I have no candidates in the pipeline. I'm gonna have to step in and do the sales again. It's like you want to kind of have that ready. So it's like if you need to fire someone tomorrow, you can probably get someone in within at least hopefully the next week because you've been nurturing some of those conversations.
I like it. It's okay. That's like that. Then I have not had the ads going, so that's interesting. Because like I know that feeling where I'm like, God damn it.
I can't
Well,
fire them because I don't have anyone else.
well, or just like, oh, my best salesperson just left. Fuck me, right? Like now, what am I gonna do? Right?
Yeah,
Like or whatever, just for whatever reason. Yeah, no, that makes
absolutely.
sense. That's a good gem right there. I like that a
And
lot.
don't pay for the ads either. Let me be clear for those listening too. Like have an Indeed ad running, you can run them for free. It's like you don't. It's not urgent. Just keep the ad running and just keep it
Interesting.
refreshed.
I didn't know. Is there a for free option? Maybe I wasn't. I don't even remember. That's cool. Okay, I'm
Absolutely.
gonna.
We
All right.
fill
Well,
most of our roles with just the free version of Indeed. We don't
that's
even
sick.
pay. Like if we're really having like a niche role that's
What'll
like
happen? immediately in my company then, because I didn't even know. I think we were paying a little bit of money for Indeed, but that makes sense because if you're constantly having it, like I could have 6 months of free, that'll equal 1 month of paid or even more.
More. Yeah, probably more. I mean, because you just
crazy.
always keep them going. Yeah, 100%.
That's wild. Okay, so this is less for me and more for my audience. When should somebody feel like, when is somebody ready to hire somebody else, right? Like I've thought of like very interesting, I don't know how to answer this question, is one I've gotten before where they're like, hey, should I hire somebody? Should I hire a VA? Should I hire a, you know, like a acquisitions manager yet? And I'm like, well, how much money have you made? And it's like 15 grand? Probably not yet. But I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is the answer to that?
I think it's hard sometimes because like everyone's going to be in a different spot, you know, and it's like some people are in like for me with, you know, with my Skills Pros program, like we're only a few months in, we're selling a few high ticket people a month right now, not anything crazy. So my answer would be to like another version of me would be like, don't hire a salesperson. But like, I also have a lot of, you know, capital and I have a lot of money to invest in things, you know, so it's like, and I have the business acumen to understand like the ramp up period, you know, so it's like everyone could be in a little bit different of a spot for that. But when you're thinking about the first hire, the first thing to do is like getting clear on like what is the problem that this person is going to solve and what is it going to allow me to do by hiring this person, and getting clear on that, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm just going to hire a VA. It's like, what problem are they solving for you so that you can go and make more money? Like, because especially when it's the first hire, you absolutely need to be making sure that whatever that hire is going to make you more money. And it doesn't mean necessarily that they are the ones that are generating the money, but it's that they're at least freeing up your time of maybe 10 hours, 15 hours a week for you to go generate more money. So I think that's one piece that people don't do enough, is like getting clear on what, by having this person, what is it going to allow me to be able to do to generate more revenue? Other considerations, you know, capital side, I'm conservative. I would tell people, you know, you should have at least 3 months of, if it's a salary person, even if it's a VA, you have 3 months of whatever you're going to be spending, you know, set aside specifically for that. Not, no, just because you have 5 grand or 10 grand set aside for, you know, your business. It's like, no, do you have, if they cost you 1,500 a month, do you have 4,500 for that role set aside on top of whatever is allocated for your other stuff in your business? So, you know, I'm a big fan of that. I'm more conservative, so I like to make sure that there's, you know, some funds set aside. But getting clear on how is it going to make you more money, either by them actively generating you more money or by them freeing up time for you to go generate more money, and what are you going to do with that time to generate the money? And then having, if it's going to be costing you monthly and salary, you know, having a little bit of a budget reserved, because most of the time, you know, a role is not going to change your entire life in the first 30 days. Like, you need to have a little bit of a runway there.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree. Like, I mean, you basically hit what I think of this as for like when people ask me this question in my community and my stuff, right? And it's basically, if the world costs money, do you have the money? Which is what you mentioned, right? And then also, like the only extra thing I might add to what you already said is, do you have a way of training people? Because I hire so many people who've worked for other real estate companies. They're like, Jonah, you have an actual SOP handbook for like what I'm supposed to do, right? And I'm like, yeah, what did they do at the last company? Last company, they told me to go get deals, make calls, get deals. And when I had a deal, I then also had to sell it too, right? And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You're supposed to be, if you're acquisitions, you're acquisitions, you're not dispositions, right?
Yeah.
Separate the roles, right? So like, I think also you have to, I think, have like a training process, at least some, like not fully developed, but at least like have something. Have
Something basic,
go
at least.
look at what Trainual is. Look at what Loom is. Right.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite book that I've been reading recently is and I'm blanking on the name, the Dan Martell one, like Buy
Buy
Back Your
Back Your
Time.
Time.
That's been a good one. That's a really good one that's been giving me some of it. I'm already doing like with Loom and all that, but there's also really good ones with like just I'm debating whether I think I can get a VA to do the emails right now. It's kind of scary, but like that would be an interesting delegation task, right?
Email what?
Like handle my entire email, be able to respond as me. I think that would be a challenge, right? But I don't know if I'm ready for it yet. Let's talk about your community a little bit, right? This is, guys, this is like something really cool that Cody's been doing, and it's been helping me so much. I was like, I want to share this with my audience. Like this stuff is like freaking awesome. So like Scale with Pros, just real quick, like what is it? What is it, and like what are your goals with it?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, the Scale with Pros community is everything that I wish that I had years ago, instead of all of the, I mean, millions and dollars of lessons of in actual company lessons that were probably lost by not knowing a lot of this stuff, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars of money that I've invested in coaches, consultants, masterminds, events, courses, all of the things over the years. And it's really just, consolidating the knowledge around, not only myself, but the team that I've built over the years that help run our companies that do, 8 figures a year. And it's taking those lessons and putting them into, hey, here's how we would set up the operations for a company. Here's how we would set up the, people and hiring and training, like how we do that for a company. Here's how we look at finance for a company. Oh, and by the way, let's bring all of these people together so that everyone can be learning together in a community atmosphere and have access to, myself and my team to be able to help kind of like point out blind spots for the people that are in the group, so they don't have to go through that same pain and suffering of not knowing how to do a lot of those things. And so that's essentially where it was born. And, it's just taking these best practices and putting them all into one place is essentially been, what the goal with Scale with Pros has been from the beginning. And the reason it's called Scale with Pros is not Scale with Cody. It's Scale with the professionals around Cody, and Cody, because it's, I'm not an expert on finance. I got a CFO, so we have him there. The group has access to him. I'm not an expert on HR. I'm pretty good at hiring. I am good at building teams. I would say that is a very strong talent of mine, is building great teams in that regard. But as far as like HR compliance, like I don't know, like 1099 W2, what docs need to be filled out versus like he handles that, make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's and all that fun stuff. But having that team there to support the people in the group, so people can scale confidently, knowing they have those resources available of the people and the information there.
So let's talk like let's pretend I'm going to pretend that I'm like a new wholesaler, right? Because that's most of my audience. I would say most of my audience are probably wholesalers that have either done no deals or have done some deals. Maybe like does a deal a month, right? A deal or two a month, right? Maybe they got 10 to 15 grand in revenue, 10 to 20 grand in revenue any given month, right? Yeah. It's just them. They haven't hired a VA yet, right? Maybe they have one VA, like that level, right? Mm-hmm. Of business. What would they gain from joining Scale with Pros? Like, what would they like? Obviously that's cool to just be able to ask questions, but I have learned that it's something even to come up with the right questions sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. Like to even understand what I don't even know what I don't know, right? Yeah. It's like I might ask you how to hire somebody, and you're gonna look at me like, bro, okay, we got to start here, right? Like you got to start with like, okay, do you even know what Indeed is? Okay, you know what Indeed is. All right. Have you ever done an interview in your entire life? Okay, good. Like here's some interview, and then like going through that whole process. So I guess like how would somebody use it? Is it like I go to a Zoom and I ask Cody like, how do I hire somebody? Or like how do you feel like somebody would use the community, or what they would use it for if at that level of like
Yeah.
1 to 2 people at
Yeah.
max, maybe 1 to 2 deals a month max.
So what I would say is this: it is at any given time a business has one constraint that's causing it from not being able to grow. There's only 4 areas of business that cause a business not to grow. Number 1, it's the marketing, which is, do you have enough people to get under contract or sell or buy, or have them get a contract, get deals, right? Like that's number 1. Marketing is and leads. Number 2 is sales. Are you okay? Maybe you're getting enough leads, but now you're not converting enough of those into something that's going to monetize and turn into money. Okay, that would be constraint number 2. Constraint number 3 would be the operational component of a business, which kind of falls into that, which is like CRM, technology, operations, website, people, like all of that kind of fits under operations. And then you have, which would be like, okay, you're getting leads, you're getting sales, but you're unorganized as shit. You don't have leads going into a CRM for you to,
on your personal cell phone.
yeah, like your leads are in your phone, like or on a yellow notepad. So it's like your leads are unorganized. So it's like you're getting leads, you're getting some stuff done, but it's like operationally, it's like, okay, the constraint is if you got more leads and more sales, it's going to be a dumpster fire because you don't have an organized way of how they're going into a client relationship management tool. You don't have a, you don't have, maybe it's a website. Like I know for some people that do like online leads, like that's very important. If you're trying to, get PPC and things going, you don't have a good website. Like there's just some operational components that might be causing the business not to be able to grow, because you could only handle so many leads manually without having like an organized system. And then there's finance. It's okay, well, is finance the constraint? Meaning like, that comes into play more of like people, I would say on the real estate side, like if you're like doing too many fix and flips and you can't fund literally more deals because you're out of capital, which happens all the time. Been there, done that. It's stressful. But that's definitely something that can happen too. And so, there's these different constraints that cause you not to be able to keep growing. And so what I would say is like one of the best things about the group is you could not even know what constraint you're stuck in right now. And you could come to like, there's all the trainings and things you can self-pace and self-learn, all of that. But it's like cutting the line and just getting on a Q&A with myself or our team and just being like, hey, this is where my business is at. This is what's going on. I know I need to do leads. I know I need to sell more. I know I need maybe some CRM. I know I need all of these things, but what do I do now? Like, what's the next thing that's going to make the biggest difference today if I did right now? And so it's like having that, the years of expertise and guidance of people that have been working in business long enough to be able to just be like, oh, like, like you're saying, it's like, okay, you want to hire, great. Indeed, you know how to hire. Have you interviewed? What are you trying to hire for? So it's like, we'll be able to help peel back what, the things that are going on in your business in a way that allows you to get clear on what's that biggest thing that may be holding you back in the business right now. And then where we can point you in the direction of like, hey, this is what you need to go do. Here's an example, right? So we have a guy in the group. He has a trucking company. So obviously different than real estate, but similar thing. This is literally hilarious because this was a conversation we had like 4 hours ago. He's like, I asked him, I was like, what's the number one constraint in your business right now? I went through the thing. I'm like marketing, sales, ops, finance. And he's like, I don't know. I know I need to go get more business, but I know I need to save to buy another truck, and I know I need to probably hire another driver. And so I was like, oh, okay, great. So let's like break this down. So I was like, let's start at the beginning. Do you have all of the business that you could handle right now, or are you struggling to fill up your trucks with routes? And he's like, oh, I'm turning business away, but I want more business. So it's like he wanted more business, but he wasn't getting the question I was really asking. So it was like, do you want, are all of your trucks full on the routes and busting at the seams? He's like, absolutely. I turn away clients every week right now because we just don't have another driver and another truck. I'm like, great. So marketing is not your constraint right now. It will be later down the road, but it's not right now. Okay. He's like, yeah, it's not. So wholesaler, you have enough leads coming in. And I'm like, okay, next step. Of the business that is coming in, obviously you're closing enough of them because you're too overwhelmed and you can't even fulfill on all of the ones that, or you can't even sell the leads enough, more of the leads you have now. So the sales process is not your issue. I didn't even have to ask him because I just know that from the conversation. He's like, yeah, we don't have that problem. Great. So let's look at operations. What is going on there? So if you have all of the, the business you could fill right now, you're getting the deals in. Why is it, what's causing you, like, can you go get another truck? He's like, well, we could get another truck, but we need to hire someone to fill that truck. And I'm like, okay, so you need to hire someone. That's your constraint. You're in the operation side and your business is stuck, not growing because you haven't hired someone. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, well, actually, like the trucks that we do have, they're all putting in overtime hours because they're too overworked because we don't have enough drivers. I'm like, ding, ding, ding. There's the thing you need to focus on as your next most important action item is getting this other driver in a truck so that you can go back to all of those people you're turning away and bring some of them in. And then you could take the overtime hours off of the two other drivers that are 20 hours a week over on their hours anyways. And then now you fill up this one truck, you're paying less money in overtime because you're not paying it at all anymore. You have another driver, another truck's out on the road generating revenue. And that's the number one constraint for the business right now. And so it's being able to go through each of those and kind of like poke at them and see like what's causing that right now.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So it's just, you could always find the number one constraint, and it's just asking the right questions. It's asking good questions. And that's what from the support side, that's what we bring, from just doing this stuff for years now, is like, we just know what questions to ask. And it's only 4 areas of business, and it's asking the right questions at each of those to identify it, of like what's causing it not to grow.
I love it so much too, because it's just like, even in my own business, you talking right now, because I just did that in my own head. It's like, where is the Jonas business like happening? And it's like, could you possibly be stuck in both 2 of them? Like, could 2 things be constraining, you think, or is it always just 1? Like, I'm almost curious. It's almost always.
You got to take it to 1. Like, it doesn't mean the other one's not important, and like, it doesn't mean you shouldn't like address it, but it's the number 1 thing. So here's another way to think about that, right? So in the cleaning company, in operations, the constraint was we don't have enough cleaners, but also the way that the scheduling was being done was kind of jacked up. And it was like, do we fix it? And so the scheduling, the issue was there's like this automated routing system, and it was like putting people on the routes, and like then it was causing lots of reschedules to the tune of almost $20,000 a week of revenue was being moved around because of routes being not optimized great for the customer experience. So we had this conundrum, and it's funny because I was literally having this conversation with our partner a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about, he's like, well, we need more cleaners, and so we need to hire more, but we also need to fix this scheduling issue because it's causing like routes to fall off.
Yeah.
And then cleaners are unhappy because like they lose, they were going to clean 3 houses, get paid for 3. Now they only got paid for 1. So then we lose cleaners, causes more churn for cleaners. So it's like this whole, those are both problems, right? But
the scheduling is more important.
The scheduling is more important. So we're like, let's go fix that. And so within the last few weeks, now they've got it to this week, we're estimating we'll have about $8,500 fall off the books, which still is falling off, but it's not 20,000. So that's been able to make progress there. And it's like, let's fix that, because that also will help with our retention of cleaners too, because if they're having a full schedule every day and they're making the money that they want to make when they're working here, it's going to keep them on longer. So that was the thing that we fixed and we're focusing on addressing. Doesn't mean that, getting more leads wasn't important. Doesn't mean that, you know, paying payroll and like all of the other things that have to happen in the business aren't important. It's just like, let's just hone in and like, it's like you have a magnifying glass, right? And it's like, if you have, you know, the sun, you have to focus on one area to make the most damage the fastest possible. Like that's what the way that we try to solve the problems in the business is like, let's really focus in on this and just solve it. And then let's move on to the next thing and just, you know, let the other thing that's not working as optimized as we want it to, not as optimized. And we're just going to be okay with that. But we're going to fix this first.
I love it. I love that. How do you, like, I guess my last question, because like I feel like, because like I'm like thinking about it for my business right now, right? I'm like, my gut tells me for my business it's probably dispositions, because I naturally hate doing that, and I don't have a dispositions manager right now. Like I like just being like I don't want to fucking talk to buyers. I like closing deals, right?
Yeah.
But I'm doing it right now, where it's just like, okay, how do you? It's like, how do you go through that though, where it's like, what's like the number one problem, right? Like do you like you saw it, like is it a quick process for you now at this point, or do you have a system for being like, okay, this isn't working, I need to figure out why this isn't working, or something isn't working, right? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like I feel
Yeah,
like it's
sometimes you have transparently, like sometimes we get the wrong problem and we attack it, and then we're like, fuck, like we didn't get the result that we wanted, and like we like, let's try again, like okay, so maybe that wasn't at the top of the list of like the biggest mover. So what happened? Why was that not the thing that we thought it was going to be? And then we like, let's solve for that, let's figure it out. So like, I'm not going to sit and pretend that like I know how to solve strategically every single problem at every single time in all of our businesses. Otherwise I'd be a bazillionaire, right? It's like I have things that I'm still trying to figure out myself. But it's definitely like, it's getting very intentional about like, okay, you know, what, like asking questions around, okay, if the business was going to double, you know, what would be the number one constraint? Okay, like what are, and then just like listing out, it's like, okay, I got 4 things. Okay, so that's obviously not one thing. But if the business was going to grow and it, what would be the thing out of those 4 things that would get me on a path to doubling the fastest? Okay, well, you know, maybe it is disposition, because it's like, well, I could get more leads and sell more. Well, I wouldn't be able to sell more because I wouldn't be able to freaking dispo the things, because I would it would just freaking fall off the ledge, and then they would just be a dumpster fire. So that becomes a thing. So it's asking those questions. So it's like, if you couldn't handle more contracts than you're getting right now because disposition would fall off the ledge, well, disposition's the problem and you need to fix that. But it's like, or it could be, you know, I could do more contracts and I just need to get more deal flow. Well, it's not dispo, it's just getting more deal flow. It's just, maybe you just don't like doing dispo, but it doesn't mean it's the number one constraint. It just means you don't like it, and you probably should have someone else help at some point.
Interesting. I love it so much. Cool. So we are sort of getting to the end of the podcast. I usually make it like an hour, and I know you have like some time, right? How do people, like, I guess I have my link. So like, how do people like start with Scale with Pros if they're interested in it, or like just like reaching out to you, and like like how can my audience help you, right? Like I think a lot of them are going to be helped by just joining the community. I've already gotten a lot out of it. Guys, Cody gave me this thing called a performance improvement plan, which is basically like final warning, or I'm going to fire you, right? And that was super helpful in and of itself. But so I think a lot of people are going to get value out of the community. I'm just going to put a link that I got in the chat. But how can my community also help you? Yeah, I don't know. Is there any way my community can help you other than just joining the community?
Yeah, you know, joining, or, you know, following me on YouTube, subscribing. I'm constantly putting out different videos around, you know, growing companies on the YouTube as well. But, you know, obviously, you know, the best way to get the most, especially for those that are like, you know, maybe even newer in their journeys, is like, if you're joining, it's not just going and watching videos and the self-paced. It's like coming on to the Q&As that we literally have dozens of, you know, between Q&As and different trainings throughout the month that are live. And so it's really coming and joining those and actually engaging and bringing your questions, because that's, honestly, the craziest thing is like, people can come in and get access to the team that's there and get their questions answered, and like literally just go and run off into the sunset for the next week of like, go and attack these things, come back next week with the new problems that you have, and then let's talk about them then. So it's like, that's the best way to get the most out of it, is like, yes, going through the self-paced trainings, but then engaging and coming to trainings where you could be a sponge and just getting all of the questions that you can get answered by the team that's there, that's been through the things that, everyone that's wanting to scale has already been through and actively does on a daily basis. Everyone that trains and, creates content within our community, we're all practitioners. We're running businesses. We're doing deals. We're putting, teams together. We're in the trenches. And, like I said earlier, Jonah, it's like, I'm still figuring stuff out. It's like we have our own challenges and things that we're consistently working on and trying to figure out as well. So, as far as that goes, obviously, it makes sense for those that to get involved in the Scale with Pros group that actually don't want to go the long way. I say it's like, if you go to Disneyland,
you guys do not want to go the fucking long way, right? I haven't always been going the wrong way, right? I joined Sub 2 and Astro, but like, God damn, guys, like sometimes there's just certain things where like, if you have the right person who is there at the right time to say the right thing, where it just clicks, and that saves you a 50 grand mistake, right? It happens so often. I just think your community is like what people are missing in business, right? Astro was amazing for learning how to do like deals, like wholesale deals, right? Sub 2 is amazing to learn how to do real estate in general, right? Like creative finance, all of that. But that in and of itself doesn't make you rich. That will make you money. It's not going to make you insanely wealthy. Yeah. Building a business, that's actually how you actually get rich, is like actually systematizing shit and making it into an actual business instead of just you running around with your hair on fire the entire time. Yeah. So anywho, I feel like it's a community we've been needing. So I'm excited. I'm happy that I'm in it, and I'm excited for other people to know about it too.
Oh, I love it. Our thing that we're always telling people is what we want to do in Scale with Pros is help people create high profit self-managing companies. And what does that mean really? It's creating a high profit self-managing company. A self-managing company is a company that you build a team where you can leave for weeks, you can leave for a month, you can leave for 2 months, and the wheels aren't going to fall off and just turn into a fire. Every year for 5 years. Every year for 5 years, I've typically spent 2 or 3 months on kind of vacation through the summer. And it's not because I just work so dang hard every day. I do work very hard consistently, and I have for years and years. But it's because I focused on the things that have allowed us to create high profit self-managing companies. And self-managing is building the right teams with the right people, with the right systems, the right processes, so that they can run without you and your team be happy doing it because you're a good leader, because you grew your leadership led during that process. So that's what we want to help people do.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, cool. I want to ask just like one last, this is usually the last question I ask anybody on the podcast, which is just, this was a bit of a different type of podcast than I usually do, right? Yeah. We're way more into business than like necessarily anything.
Well, this is like our number 2 one from the earlier on in your series.
The other one I did with Cody, if you want to know about Cody and like his life, his story and all that, this was, how do we actually make some goddamn money? But what like it, and especially this can relate to scaling with businesses. Like if you could go back to Cody, right, when he was starting in real estate or anything else, like what would you tell him then, knowing everything you know now?
So when I was first initially starting, gosh, there's so many things I would tell myself when I was first starting. First starting, I'll just take it and just stick on the real estate side of things. So like, for the focus of what I was doing in real estate. So if I went back and told myself what I knew now, because I started house hacking in my early 20s, is Cody, you ding dong. Every year you should have just bought a house, moved out of it, rented the last one, and just did that every year until you were 27, 28. Instead of, my first house that I house hacked was a great deal, and I sold it because I got swindled into buying Amazon stores with the equity that I grew in it, and then I got scammed and lost all the money. So that's a
that happens, right? Like you're just gonna do. It's just gonna happen like that, where it's like you make a mistake and it's like, well, shit.
Yeah. So I would have just said, hey, just, especially for those that are maybe younger, have flexibility with their spouse or significant others, is, taking that opportunity to house hack, because, you can get into, properties and, just every year do it again. And just, you can build a little portfolio without putting tons of cash of your own out, and you build some good equity, principal pay down over some years. I mean, that was a big part of, that was about half of the reason that I was a net worth millionaire at 25, was because of a few of the properties that I had bought. I just wish I kept all of them, and it would have been, even more, but, live and learn.
Learn. I love it, my man. Any last words before I wrap it up?
Just, for those that are doing the thing, every day is going to be a grind. Commitment is doing the thing you said you were going to do long after the feeling you initially set it in has left you. So keep going. Keep going.
I love it. All right, guys, that's Skorch the Fears episode, I guess, 137. Cody, you're amazing. I appreciate you, brother. Everybody, we will see y'all next week. Peace out.